So now we'll get into my favorite remedy for viral infections, gelsemium. And this is called the dopey, droopy, drowsy, dizzy remedy. And it's used when you have that feeling, that kind of truck ran over you feeling like you just can't get out of bed. You're so completely drained of energy you can't even sit up. And if you do manage to drag yourself out of bed, your eyelids are drooping. People who work with homeopathy can tell just by looking at someone if they need gelsemium because they can't even open their eyes. So it's probably our favorite remedy for the flu. It's also used for what we call hearing bad news. And that's what happens when you get that phone call you've been dreading. It might be your teenage kid just ran off the road. It might be that, I don't know, your credit card was hacked into. It might be that maybe an elderly relative has passed away. So all of a sudden, you get this bad news that you need to cope with. There are two different ways you might react to that, at least from the point of view of homeopathy. If you become just completely like hysterical, you're crying, you're sobbing, you're over-emotional, you're going to need a remedy lower on your list, Ignatia. Now, you imagine you're taking your dog to the vet. How do dogs know that they're about to go to the vet? They know. They know. And if your dog reacts by going, ugh, just all shaky in the knees and not wanting to get into his little dog carrier, you can give it gelsemium. What if you know that you have to go to the doctor or the dentist? Or what if you have to give a talk? You can take gelsemium. If you get that kind of weak in the knees, trembly, mind-going blank kind of feeling at the thought of going for an MRI, going for a tooth extraction, or going for public speaking, which is probably worse than either one, then you can take gelsemium and it will help to strengthen you. Rescue remedy is kind of a universal remedy for any kind of trauma or emotional shock or blow. Flower essences are milder than homeopathic remedies, so there are ways in which it's great to experiment with them, and some people are very responsive to them. I mean, if it works, that's great. For some people, they're just not strong enough for people to notice, so they're great for pets. You could definitely put it in the water bowl of a pet who seems upset about something. A rescue remedy is also great because there's no way you can overdose with it. I don't know if you or a child seems sensitive. When you're first getting to know a new product, it's always safe to start with one drop and then build up from there. It's a very safe way to introduce it. So arsenicum is actually very similar to gelsemium in one important way. This extreme tiredness. It's like if somebody gets a cold and they can't get out of bed for 5 days, that's not really normal. I mean, people are usually miserable with the cold, but they're usually kind of up and around, at least after the first day. So if somebody has a cold, or if they have diarrhea or the flu, and they're extremely, extremely tired, you might want to first think about gelsemium, but also think about arsenicum. One way you can tell the difference is that the kind of the personality profile, the emotional state is different. And with homeopathic remedies, some of them have a very strong association with a certain way of behaving or a certain way of feeling. So with gelsemium, it's like this brain-dead, deer-in-the-headlights, drained, kind of numb shock feeling. With arsenicum, there's a lot of fretfulness and restlessness and a lot of anxiety about very practical things, sometimes in an irrational way. Somebody who needs arsenicum, when they get sick, they might start worrying like, what if I'm so sick I can't go back to work? And what if I lose my job? And if I lose my job, how will I cover my mortgage? And then I might be homeless. Like, they really start to worry about food, money, health, survival, a roof over their head, things like that. They might be very needy in a way that's, I'm going to get to pulsatilla, which is a little kid, kind of whiny, clingy, needy. People who need arsenicum might be more bossy and demanding and kind of like, they feel like when they're sick, the world revolves around them, and everybody in their universe is there to take care of them when they're sick, and they might not be very grateful. They might kind of order you around and feel like they want to have you around. So they want to make sure all their needs are going to be met. So this kind of fretful anxiety and restlessness, especially, it's funny, some homeopathic remedies also have a certain time when they're better or worse. The arsenicum time is like midnight to 2 a.m. If the person has insomnia, then they're lying awake, they're worrying, and they might be so uncomfortable that they get out of bed and pace around. Very typical arsenicum behavior. So then there's a typical symptom for arsenicum that gelsemium doesn't have. It's called nose running like a faucet. And you probably know, if you've ever had a cold, or if we're going to get to allergies too, it could be from allergies. When you're sneezing a lot, you get this watery nasal discharge, and it's so profuse you actually have to stick Kleenex up your nose so you don't blow your nose all the time. arsenicum. It's a great remedy for that. Think of the nose running like a faucet. Another one is burning diarrhea. That's a very typical arsenicum symptom, and it's probably the best remedy for traveler's diarrhea and food poisoning diarrhea. So colds have different stages. Most people in the very beginning when they get a cold, they're sneezing a lot, and their nose is running like a faucet, and then after a few days it started to kind of get a little thicker. And then a few more days it gets so thick, it's like rubber cement. It's thick and sticky like rubber cement, and it's hard to blow out. So this is the phase when you need Collie-Bic. We say when it sticks, use Collie-Bic. Or when it's thick, you can use Collie-Bic. So this could be this rubber cement like mucus anywhere in the body. Sometimes people with their ears fill up and they have to pop their ears. You know, like in the plane when you want to pop your ears? But sometimes you have stuff in your ears, you can kind of feel it, you can't hear that well. It's creating a little pressure in there. It could be a Collie-Bic situation. Totally worth trying Collie-Bic for that. It can also be when you have nasal congestion and it's hard to blow out. You try to blow and nothing really comes out. But when it comes out, it's like these boogers, you know, these thick boogers. It could be you have mucus in your chest. It's hard to get up. But when you actually cough it up, it's like these little, it's gross. It's these little plugs, these little greenish plugs of stuff. Collie-Mure is actually a little better if there's water in the ears. It's hard to find, though. I don't think it's a remedy you usually find in a health food store. So that's why I mentioned you probably want to have Collie-Bic on hand, and it's totally worth trying if you feel like your ears are kind of blocked up. I've had clients say, I feel like my ears are blocked up, and I have to get on the plane, and I'm worried about flying with my ears totally plugged up, and Collie-Bic has changed that. It's really rescued the situation within 24 hours. The Collie-Bic, it's like the nature of the mucus. It's kind of the way it's thick and sticky. It's hard to budge with a homeopathic remedy. So when you want to make a remedy stronger, what you can do is take a couple of pellets and put them in about half a glass of water. If they're the big pellets from the Blue Tube from Whole Foods, those big pellets, they're coated, they're hard. So you might have to like crush them with a spoon to get them to dissolve. And then you can stir the water really well, and you have this beautiful solution. The whole solution is becoming like a great big dose of the remedy. You can sip it frequently, and when you have something that's hard to turn around with homeopathy, like this thick, sticky mucus, it's actually good to put the remedy in water. It makes it stronger, because basically all of the water is taking on the property of the remedy, and then it's touching, the liquid is touching more nerve endings in your mouth than just a little tiny pellet. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but it makes it stronger with a small amount of water. They put it in a gallon jug, probably would get lost, but small amount of water, you're making it stronger. So Nux vomica, you can tell by the name, right? Vomica. You can tell it's good for vomiting. It's good for nausea, good for vomiting. It's good for the whole GI tract. Heartburn, to hemorrhoids, whole thing, diarrhea, constipation, many different things, often from eating either spicy food, junky food, fatty food, rich food, that kind of thing. It's a great liver remedy. It means it's a great hangover remedy. So please don't abuse it. Please don't feel like you can just go out and get drunk. Don't go out and get drunk and then just use Nux vomica to feel better. But if you do happen to be in a situation where you feel like there's some liver toxicity, you might have a headache, for example, because you have some liver toxicity. Nux vomica would be very good for that. Pulsatilla is a remedy. If you have a small child, you want to have pulsatilla on hand. This is the remedy for kids who are such a common pattern for small children. They're whiny, they're clingy, they're needy when they're sick. When they're not sick, they're the sweetest kids. They're the sweetest, most loving, most affectionate kids who want to climb on your lap and say, I love you, Mommy. That kind of kid. They might be kind of changeable in their moods. They might cry a little bit if they're upset about something, but you give them some attention, give them some consolation, and they're smiling again and telling you that they love you and you're the best mommy ever. But then when they're sick, they become more needy and clingy and whiny and maybe a little manipulative in a very sweet way. So you can't get mad at them because they're so sweet, but they're a little manipulative. So it's a good remedy for anything infectious for a small child who's showing this kind of behavior. It could be a cold or a flu. It could be tummy ache or anything. But it's also a great remedy when you think it might be psychosomatic, like your child wants to stay home from school, and you're not sure. She says, my tummy hurts or my head hurts, Mommy. And you're not sure if the kid's really sick or just wants to stay home. You can try a dose of pulsatilla because it tends to resolve things. It's a little bit psychosomatic for somebody in this state. So Ignatia, I mentioned, this is the emotional first aid remedy. It's the way people usually react. I already talked about chalcemium. in terms of going numb. But most people would tend to get very upset when they hear bad news. Or any situation of intense emotions. It can be intense sudden grief, intense fright, betrayal, abandonment, humiliation, any strong emotions when the person is reacting, really expressing strong emotions, maybe sobbing a lot, for example. Ignatia isn't going to numb your grief, and we don't want to numb people's grief. We want people to experience their grief. But sometimes, let's say somebody just died, you need to be able to function, and Ignatia will help you to pull yourself together so you can experience your emotions but also function at the same time. It will help to give you the strength to process your emotions. So we talked about rescue remedy, and just to note that rescue remedy can work for physical traumas too. So something like a kid falling off their bike. So she's upset, but she's also hurt. Rescue remedy could be great for that. So rescue remedy for kids bickering in the car, what a universal situation. Carry it with you always. Always, yeah. Never leave home without rescue remedy and arnica. I mentioned elderberry syrup because it's my favorite thing, especially if you have kids. They tend to like the taste of it. But, you know, it's a very strong antiviral. They're actually talking about research. There was research done on it in Israel as effective as Tamiflu for the flu. And safe. No side effects. Well, you can use elderberry alongside the other. You can. It's an herbal remedy, so you can use it with the homeopathic remedies. Okay. And then to choose between gelsemium and arsenicum, you look at the symptoms. So I'm going to review instructions. So the blue tube, first I'm going to tell you how to get them out. Most people who buy this end up getting out the screwdriver and the hammer. It's true. It's true, because it's got this inscrutable top. So, well, you could get out your screwdriver. It's because, like you take the top off, and then it's like the little pellets won't come out. This is the most frustrating thing. I realized I had to put something in my book about how to get the pellets out when I had a friend with a PhD who went and got the remedy I recommended and then called me and said, I can't figure out how to get the pellets out. So here it is. So the company that makes this, there's a widespread belief that you can't touch the pellets with your fingers. I mean, most homeopaths will tell people you can't touch the remedies with your fingers. You can't touch the pellets with your fingers. Nobody's ever given us any research money to test this, and people tend to want to be kind of protective of the remedy and make sure it's going to work. So this is one of the elements of homeopathic lore that gets passed along with no coffee, no mint toothpaste, no electric blankets, no go to the dentist, long list of things. None of which seem to matter. The coffee thing, okay, I'm going to tell you. You go to a convention of homeopaths, you might as well open a Starbucks outlet right there in the convention because all homeopaths drink coffee. So why we try to tell people not to use coffee, I don't know. It really doesn't seem to matter. So this is the point. I've actually done research myself in my own little way. I went on a meditation retreat. I work as the trip doctor because I'm very lucky to belong to a community that wants to use homeopathy and avoid Western medicine at all costs. So we had hundreds of people on a meditation retreat in China. People got so sick. The air was so polluted. There was this cough that started going around. And in the meditation room, you could hardly meditate because there was this chorus of coughs. So I set up a little clinic in the back, and I was handing out my voodoo medicine in the back. But I had brought along little tubes, like little things to dispense into, and I ran out after 1 week. And there was no way to get more in China. So I started putting the remedies into people's hands, and they worked just fine. So ever since then, I thought, it just doesn't matter. We need to make homeopathy easy for people, not make all these obstacles and all these rules and all this rigidity around it. But this company, they still believe that you shouldn't touch it with your hands, and they've done the most beautiful job of protecting it. So beautiful you can hardly get the pellets out. But this is what you do. You put the clear plastic cap on the bottom, and then you twist, and then they're going to pop out. It's like designed so that in this, like this, it's just going to pop out. And then you can take the cap off and put them in your mouth. I know everybody looks skeptical. I would just get out the screwdriver and just be able to pour them out. Okay, so, and they also say 5 pellets. 2 is really enough. And the frequency matters more than the number of pellets. I'm going to go back to my analogy about learning a song. If you wanted to learn a song, it'd be better to have maybe just 1 or 2 people sing it to you 5 times than to have 5 people sing it to you once. And that's like, it doesn't matter that much if you take 5 pellets. It's like reinforcing the information, but your body doesn't get that much different information compared to repeating it. How often you repeat it is much more important than how many pellets you take. And this is especially important for people who get the teeny weeny pellets that I give out, where it's hard to even count them. And I just say the number of pellets really is not that important. Frequency, we generally think about 2 to 4 times a day. So like if you're really, really sick, you might take your remedy 4 times a day. You might wake up the next morning and feel 50% better and just take it a couple of times. And a couple of days later, you're really better, you stop. This is completely different from the Western medicine idea that if you're taking antibiotics, they'll say even if you feel better, you have to finish your antibiotics. This is the exact opposite. As soon as you feel better, you just leave it alone, you just let the remedy work, you just leave it alone. If you were to keep taking it, you actually might get into this boomerang situation. We call it an aggravation, and it's really aggravating when it happens, which is that your symptoms get worse. So the best way to protect against that is just slow down as it starts to work and stop when it's really worked. Sometimes in a real emergency, I don't know, you're just in a car accident or something, you can take it every 15 minutes. If you're just really bleeding or, you know, some kind of, or like very sudden, very intense fever, you want to bring down a child's fever, you can actually give it every 15 minutes. But you want to keep checking and see, does a person really still need it? A lot of times people heal while they sleep. So a lot of times people will wake up feeling better than they did the day before. So you can also check that and see if you want to kind of back off on the frequency. On the other hand, if you're giving it pretty often and it's not working, you can put it in water. 2 pellets, 4 ounces of water. Crush it if you need to dissolve it, and then stir it really well. Sip frequently. You can swish it like mouthwash, so it really touches a lot of nerve endings in your mouth, and that's a good way to make it work better. Yeah, because a cell salt is so mild, it's so incredibly mild. Usually cell salts are things you take over a period of time to act as a tonic and to strengthen you in some way, but most people can't feel them working. It's possible that in somebody who's very sensitive, that a 30C, it's a standard dose in a health food store, a 30C could make you feel worse. If that happens, take note of it. You might be someone who's very sensitive to homeopathy who needs to seek out a milder one, a 6C or a 12C. And a large Whole Foods would have these in a milder form, or you can easily order them online. It's something to learn about yourself. It's great in one way. It means you're very, very responsive.
Well, my experience has been either it works immediately and unbelievably effectively or not at all.
Which means it's the right remedy or it's the wrong remedy. So it's either it's like hitting the nail on the head or not. Partly depends on how sure you are that you have the right remedy. If you're really pretty sure it matches well, then the task is to make it strong enough, like to put it in water or take it more frequently. On the other hand, if you're somebody who's very sensitive, who tends to react or to feel it working, and you don't feel it, then you might give up on it more quickly. It also depends on the situation. Some situations, like you're bleeding profusely or something, it's going to take longer. It's going to take more of a remedy to turn that around. So you don't expect it to stop bleeding after one dose. You're kind of thinking about the nature of the condition. How hard will it be to turn this condition around? You're thinking about what you know, and you'll learn this from experience, what you know about the person's sensitivity. Some people are very sensitive in general. Other people tend to need a lot to notice something. And then the third thing is, do you really think it's a well-matching remedy? Or you weren't really sure in the first place. Maybe you had a backup idea and you're kind of eager to try the backup idea. A lot of times I like to have people try it for a day and then assess the next morning because they've healed while they sleep. Like they might not notice it that much that day, but the next morning you're significantly better. If you were to take 4 doses of a remedy in one day and the next morning it hasn't changed for cold or flu or something, I really would expect, not that it would be gone, but that you would notice that you were feeling better. Your energy's coming back, your sense of well-being is coming back. And if you didn't have that, I would consider, if there's another remedy, it seems like it would match well. I'm about to whip through hay fever real quick. And the reason I can whip through it real quick is because you already know 3 of the best remedies. Pulsatilla, historically the best remedy for hay fever, but especially a good remedy if it's in a person who responds to the hay fever by becoming kind of weepy, needy, clingy, dependent, and emotional. But if you're not like that, I wouldn't try it. Nux vomica is also a great remedy for hay fever. And one way you might know that you need Nux is that you try to blow your nose and nothing comes out. Like you feel, your nose feels all stuffed up, but there's nothing actually in there because it's all swollen up inside. The tissues are swollen up, and that's why you can't breathe through your nose. That's a very typical thing with Nux. Somebody who needs Nux is likely to be irritable, and is the kind of person who might be likely to go for the spicy food, the junk food, the the fast food, fatty food, that kind of thing. So if that quality is present, you're especially likely to think of Nux. If you can't blow anything out through your nose and you can't breathe through it either, you would definitely think of Nux vomica. Arsenicum is another great remedy for hay fever, just like for colds. You sneeze a lot and you get this watery, nose running like a faucet thing. It's great for that. Here's another remedy very similar to arsenicum, nose running like a faucet, Allium cepa, and this has what we call the red mustache. And that means the nasal discharge irritates the skin under your nose. And so you're getting all red and raw under here. So Allium cepa, the nose running like a faucet, and irritating the skin, like excoriating the skin under your nose, so it creates this feeling of a red mustache. Sabadilla, this is for what we call a salvo of sneezes. That means like you just keep sneezing, you can't stop sneezing. Sabadilla, great hay fever remedy. If you just, once you start sneezing, you can't stop. You just have this ongoing, like one sneeze after another. Hay fever is a situation that's great for combination remedies. There's a brand, I love this brand, these products are so good, BioAllers. They make a whole series of allergy remedies, and they really work. They make one for pet hair allergies. When I had my health food store, I had people buy this. Now, somebody who's allergic to cat hair probably won't own a cat, but they might go visiting somewhere where there's a cat. So I had people buy this and say it would work on the spot, but it also had a cumulative effect, so they stopped after a while of using it. They weren't allergic to cat hair anymore. So you have cat hair allergy, you have grain allergy, dairy allergy, mold allergy, yeast allergy, many, many different kinds of allergies, and they have an excellent combination of things that will help with that particular allergy. You can also get pollen allergies for different parts of the country or different types of trees. You can get a juniper allergy, or you can get a northeast trees, northeast forest remedy. You can just go online and just put in northeast homeopathic remedy, northeast allergy. So this is a situation where the combinations actually work really well. I'll mention just, this is my last one for allergies. When you look at the name of it, you're going to see why this works so well. It's called histaminum, like histamine. Histaminum. Histamine, but with a UM on the end. Really typical ending for homeopathic remedy. Histaminum, so it's spelled like histamine, but UM on the end. And is for that histamine reaction, this basic, the sneezing, itching, watery nose. Histaminum works really well for that no matter what the cause is. And they actually have that at Whole Foods. So sometimes you need to experiment a little bit to find the one that's best for you. But once you find one that works for you, you have a friend for life. Because you will probably tend to need the same one over and over. The expiration date is an artifact of the FDA. They actually don't expire. I'll tell you the truth, anybody in my practice, my remedies are all 17 years old. I got these big kits when I first opened my practice, and they're all 17 years old. They all work great. So the reason that there's an expiration date is that the FDA wants the homeopathic pharmacy that makes it, the manufacturer, to prove that the remedy will last for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. So each time it makes a batch of a remedy, it has to keep one sample on hand that the FDA can come and inspect for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. It's simply a storage problem. They don't want to have to store these samples for 10 years for each batch of remedy that they make. They don't have room, or it's just not practical. So there's this totally arbitrary, typical expiration date of 5 years, which means nothing. There are actually remedy kits from homeopaths from 200 years ago. This blue tube, it has a very general guideline for how much to take. It says 5 pellets 3 times a day. I found 2 pellets is really enough, and the 3 times a day it's very general, because the people who make this remedy, they don't know how sick you are or how fast you get better. So that's kind of a generic suggestion. If you're going to take it preventively, you only need 1 dose. And also it's better not to take different remedies at the same time. And that's because remedies, even though they're categorized by the FDA as medicines, a better way to think of them is as tiny little computer chips that store a tremendous amount of information. This is actually information technology in the form of nano pharmacology, which means tiny, tiny, tiny particles of the starting substance. I'm going to plunge right into the research briefly. For many years it's been said, how can homeopathic remedies work? There's nothing in them. Well, homeopaths, we know there must be something in them because they do really dramatic things. So anyway, we know there's something in them, and thank God for the Indians. India is the country where homeopathy is most integrated in the national healthcare system. They have over 100 homeopathic medical schools, comparable in length to our medical schools, and they have over 100 homeopathic hospitals. They do surgery and all kinds of things, primarily using homeopathic remedies and curing illnesses, chronic illnesses that are considered incurable here. So they're very interested in figuring out, like, what's going on in a homeopathic remedy. And at the Indian Institute of Technology, which is kind of like their MIT, they now have a measuring device that can detect such tiny particles. They found there actually are tiny particles in a homeopathic remedy solution, little particles of the starting substance. And if you think about snowflakes, think about the patterns that snowflakes form. It's been said there are no two alike, but they all are just H2O. They're these simple little water molecules in many different formations. We now have electron microscopes that can detect in the homeopathic remedy water the presence of patterns that are caused by the starting substance. Whatever it starts with, calendula is a plant. It's like a little marigold. Arnica is actually another little, it's a plant. Whatever the starting substance is, phosphorus, of course, is a mineral. You get these tiny little particles that they're like seeds that are starting the formation of different kinds of crystals, different patterns. Each starting substance makes a different pattern in the water, even though it's simply H2O. In ordinary water, you have the little water molecules just randomly bumping into each other like bumper cars. But you know, if you start to form it into ice, it starts to form crystals. If you start to form it into snowflakes, it starts to form crystals. Apparently, in the remedy water, even though it's still liquid, the bonds are a little bit flexible, so it's still pourable, but basically what's happening is that these crystals are forming. Each starting substance making a specific pattern, holding information that's transmitted to the water in your body, and your body is more than half water. So once it gets into your body, that's still kind of a black box. We still haven't figured out what happens at that point, but at least we have an idea. What are we going to do if there's something poisonous in it? Well, these tiny particles of the substance, it's dilute enough that there's not enough arsenic to cause a problem for you. So the FDA has actually done its own research to determine for each remedy what's the amount that's safe to put in a tube like that, to put in a health food store. The FDA allows homeopathic arsenic to be sold at Whole Foods because they've determined that it's safe in that kind of dilution. There are other things like some remedies made from bee sting venom, for example. There's some other kind of toxic substances. For each one, the FDA determines at what low level of dilution that there might still be some of the starting substance left, and they won't allow it to be sold. But that's generally